Hey viewers, my name's Cara. This is currently 2013, but what I want to do today is talk about an old video that I did back in 2009. I kind of want to update it, make it a little more realistic for how I view it. Back in 2009, I did a lot of videos that other people in the pagan community on YouTube were talking about. I did them as video responses. We talked about magic circles in Wicca, and we talked about Wicca's 5 must-haves. The 5 must-haves video that I did has always bothered me since then, because I didn't really answer it the way that I truly feel that I would answer it if you were just asking me, well, what is necessary to be Wiccan or to practice the way that you do? Instead, what I did is I talked about physical items, because I think that's what we were supposed to do. The video response was supposed to be about, you know, what are your 5 items, your top 5 must-haves. And so that's what I talked about, and that's fine and dandy. But it's always kind of bothered me because I am so much about you don't need physical items, you don't need these things, and that's very true. So it's always kind of bothered me that I went for the physical route instead of doing my own thing and talking about the non-physical. So what I want to do today is visit a few different must-have lists. I have 3 lists, and then I also have a couple things that aren't on the list that I also think are very important depending on what you're talking about, and then a few things that I am not including on any of these lists, and why. Back when I did these videos in 2009, it was specifically about Wicca, and I identify as Wiccan, so you will notice that these are very specific to a certain way of practicing, and my way is very eclectic, pagan, whatever the actual label is, so I am not telling you all out there that in order to be Wiccan you must have these things or anything like that, but these are things that I feel are must-haves for me personally, the way that I practice, or for anyone who chooses to practice in a manner similar to my own, or anyone who's interested in a path like this. So that said, the first list are things that I think I would say if someone came up to me and said, okay, well, what do I really have to have, like bare bones? What do I need in order to do magic the way that you do it? The first item on that list is you. You have to have you. And it may seem pretty obvious, you are you, so you automatically have it, but the way that I practice is very much about things that come from you. I use my body, my hands, my energy, my knowledge, my past experiences, the way that I view things. Each person's practice is going to be different based on who they are. And then I do also physically use my body in practice, my personal energy, and all of that kind of thing. So it may seem obvious, but I do think that the most basic thing that you need to have in order to practice is you. Number 2, I do think it is very helpful to have some manner of recording your progress, recording your thoughts, things that you learn, and just the things that you do. So whether that is a handwritten book, journal, diary, or whether it's posting videos on YouTube and tracking your progress from 2009 until now and in the future, or if you have a blog online, or if you just want to type it into documents in your computer and save it for yourself, a voice recorder that you can speak into, anything like that, I think it's very important to have some manner of recording. Third thing I think is really important, may also seem obvious, especially if you have a handwritten book, but the third thing that I think is really important is a paper and pen. Some sort of paper and some sort of writing implements. That may seem like a silly thing to put on there, but my practice includes a lot of petition magic, so it involves actually writing things down and then doing something with that physically written word. And of course we have paper and writing utensils all over the place, but if you were to put me on a desert island and say that I could only bring these 5 things, I would not want to be there without paper and pen. The fourth thing I think is really important, you should have something that you can get in multiple colors, whether that be multicolored pieces of paper, scraps of fabric, ribbons, candles, crystals, rocks, anything that you can have in different colors, I think is really important because I use color in a lot of different ways. It's also something that can replace anything that you don't have. In my practice, if I don't have something to represent a certain thing, well, there might be a color associated with it, so I might just use something of that color, and that color is what helps me to represent that thing in my work. Since I'm being very loose with how this list goes, I am making number 5 the elements. All of the elements together are the 5th thing that I think is really important. Not everyone works with the elements, not everyone works with the same cultural system of elements, but some people don't work with elements at all. But for me and the way that I practice, the elements are very important, so I would want to have some way to represent them. Whether it be with color or actual physical items, that is my first list of 5 must-haves. My second list is of specific items that I feel I would need for spellcraft specifically. So this would be the physical items that you actually obtain, grab, buy, make, whatever it is. And these are not things, you know, to be a Wiccan or to be a pagan or to live this as your everyday lifestyle. This is specifically for me items that I feel I would need to do spellcraft. The first thing is that book to record things, and no, I don't need the actual book to do the magic, but for me it's very important to track my practice. The second thing that I would really need to have are candles. I use candles for a lot because candles do come in different colors, different sizes, different shapes. So much can be represented with candles. So many different things can be done to candles. Third thing on my list is incense, because like candles, incense has a lot of different qualities to it. You can get it in different forms, it comes in different colors and scents. You can use it as a representation for an element, or recently I have started using incense as an offering. I got that idea from someone else and I've really liked it so far. The fourth thing that I would need is, like I said, some way of representing the elements. So for me, I have to be able to get out in nature and I have to be able to go and collect things from nature. That's very important to me. Now obviously if I were stranded on that desert island, I would already be in nature and I would have all of the elements right there. That's not something I would have to bring with me to a desert island, or to a deserted island rather. It's not necessarily a desert. And the fifth thing that I would put on that list is the paper and pen, again, because I do use that a lot. Something else that I would put on that list that I didn't necessarily put in the top 5, but also I think is really helpful and important, is food. I use food in a lot of different ways in my practice, whether it actually be for a spell, using it in celebration, giving it as an offering, libations. You can get incenses and oils and other things like that that are derived from foods, because foods have different magical properties in themselves. And then there's just the fact that whenever you have a get-together, whenever you have people together to celebrate or anything like that, there's always food involved. The last list of 5 that I have is my really, you don't need to have any physical items to practice list. This list is of the 5 qualities that I think you really should have if you're going to practice the way that I do, or in a manner similar to the way that I do. Not everyone practices the way I do, so this list will not apply to everyone, but this is my list of 5. Number 1, as you can imagine, again, is you. You really don't need any physical item other than you, your body and your mind and your spirit, your energy. You. You've all got that covered, so we'll move on. The second thing that I think you really must have is an ability and a willingness to be honest with yourself. I think honesty is a very important thing. Honesty with other people, honesty with your deity or whatever concept it is that you work with, and honesty with yourself. I think that's really important, just to have a really good grasp on what you think and what you feel and what you know, and to be honest about that. Number 3, it's kind of a combination. The last 3 are actually kind of a combination, but number 3, I feel that you should have, that you must have, a desire and a passion and a willingness to be constantly learning, and to know that you're always going to be learning and you're never going to learn at all. And then going along with that, I think you should have the ability to make mistakes and just learn from them, and accept that you're going to make mistakes and not let that hinder you, but realize that that's part of the learning process. Number 4, I think that you must have an open mind and be willing to learn all these new things and try new things. But again, going with that, I think that you also must have confidence, or the strength sort of within yourself, to know those certain things, those beliefs and practices that you really hold on to as your own, and you're not afraid to stand up for them even when other people will tell you that you should change. So I think you should have an open mind and be willing to change some ideas as you learn more and maybe your concept changes, and you shouldn't have to cling to those things that are holding you back. You should be able to move forward, but I also think it's important to know when you shouldn't. Number 5 for me was actually really hard to think of. After those first 4 things, I was like, what else is there? What else do I really feel that you need to have as a person following this type of path? And what I came up with is, again, a combination of 2 things. I feel that in order to practice the way that I do, or to have a practice similar to mine, you have to have love. Love for yourself, love for what you're doing, love for the world in general, love for other people in general, an overall kind of quality and feeling of love. And if you don't like the word love, I would also consider this to be, you have to have a positive outlook. I know a lot of people particularly have trouble with this one, because a lot of people say, I definitely do not love everyone in the world, and I'm never gonna love everyone in the world, and so on. And let me just say, I agree with that. I don't love every individual person in the world. That's not what I'm talking about. You do not have to love every person in the world. But what I'm really talking about, and what I truly feel the song All You Need Is Love is talking about, is not this romantic love or this like necessarily friendship or kinship with individual people. It's just an overall feeling, an overall outlook. And I think when you take away the romantic, familial, whatever kinds of labels you can put on love, sensual, it really just gets down to this thing, this way of thinking that could solve so many problems. If you just had like a mutual respect for other people, it would solve a lot. You don't have to love them, you don't have to like them. Peace, I guess, is almost the word. And so I also say positive outlook because the way that I practice, if you get really negative about it, you know, first of all, why are you going to keep doing it? If you just think that everything's negative and like, oh, this isn't going to work, nothing good is going to come from this, why would you be practicing at all? So you have to have a positive outlook that what you're doing is really going to change your life for the better. It's going to help you. It's going to do good. And I'm also not saying that you have to see the entire world as inherently positive and, you know, people at the core are inherently good. Let's not get into that debate. But I do think that in a certain spirituality like this, at least the way I practice and the way I do things, having a negative outlook or coming from a place of hatred or fear or misunderstanding or anything like that is only going to hinder you. So my 5 absolute things that I think you need to have are yourself, honesty with yourself and others, the ability to learn and make mistakes, an open mind, but being secure in the things that you definitely believe, and a general feeling of love or positive outlook. This video is really long, so really quick before I go, 2 more things that I think are very important to my practice but are not on any of the lists because they don't fit the specific list that I did. Having symbols of my faith is really important to me. I wear a lot of jewelry with symbols of my religion on it, and that's important to me both as kind of a protective amulet. Like, to me, having that close to me means a lot to me personally, but there is also an element of my practice where I think it's very important to represent that to the rest of the world and let people see it and have it be known. And then another thing is people to talk to. If I didn't have people to talk to about my faith, it would be a lot more difficult. So I didn't put those on any of those lists because they weren't like items that I need to do magic or things that you have to have in order to practice, but they are very helpful things that are important to me. And then another way that I think some people might look at this 5 must-haves thing is just thinking about like, well, what are the requirements for ritual? What are the different elements and steps of going through a ritual? Those are all the things you need. So some people might say that you need a method of cleansing. I specifically did not put that on these lists because there are so many different ways of cleansing and you don't need any outside physical items to cleanse. A lot of people use them, and even I use them, but I mean, you know, bare bones, there are ways of doing a cleansing of yourself and space that you don't need anything for. I will talk about that more in another video. I have a long list. And then another thing is you have to have something as an offering. And like I mentioned incense, I mentioned food, things like that, but really, again, you don't need anything physical for an offering either because there are many ways to do an offering. Whether it be offering up your own energy, offering a song or a dance or a prayer, anything like that. There are just many other ways of doing it. So those are my thoughts on the real must-haves of my practice and the way I do things. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.